Hey guys, how you doing? This is Mick Tully for World Martial Arts Television. It is my great pleasure because it's the one and only Tony Terranova. Tony, thanks for joining me and listening to my ridiculous preamble there. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Good to see you, mate. You look great. You haven't aged a bit, mate.
We'll start off with the inevitable question. Tony, how did you get started in martial arts?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you know that because we're from the same end of the woods. But I actually started when I was about 18, and firstly in Kung Fu, which I didn't, everyone to their own. It didn't sit right. And then I met Johnny Johnston, who was a pretty powerful doorman in Coventry, and we were friends, and he dragged me into the old Shotokan days, and they were rough. It was full of doormen. Geoff Thompson was in my hall. But that was the start of my journey. And John was very out of the box then. He would take me to judo places. He'd take me to Dev Barrett's kickboxing and made me buy a bag. So from the early days, my MMA came from him because his view was Shotokan's great, but you need to pack this into it and that into it and that into it. And then from that, my work moved me down here and I got away from that. But I kept in touch with Geoff and did some courses with Geoff, always been close with him. And then I met Master Sken, spent some time with Master Sken, who's just a guru in Thai boxing, and then from there, started my BJJ journey really late, initially with John B. Will, who was really good, and then moved over to Chico Mendes. So 45 years later, I'm here, still doing it, still training 7 days a week physically and doing the martial arts when I can. And I've learned the same thing that I told you when I first met you, Mick. Martial arts is just one word: movement.
Movement. I use this all the time when I talk. I talk to people all the time and say it because you've always been like that. Remember the first time we ever really met? First time we ever really met, and you were just. I looked at you moving, and I was like, "Have you done Kali?" And you went, "No, no." And I said, you move like a guy who does Kali. And you were like, really? And then I got to know you, we talk about Shotokan. And I was like, you're the most, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, because there's Shotokan exponents. So you mentioned, we'll go back a little bit. So you mentioned Johnny Johnson, right? Johnny Johnson is one of the most open-minded men you're ever going to meet. But you get why he does Shotokan. Because just when you speak to him, 5 minutes conversation with him, you get it. And he's doing the Three Amigos now with Steve Lowe and with Simon Oliver. And you see those guys, you go, I get why you guys are karateka. I get it. And they make it work. But they're old school. It's that old thing that as you get older, you realize if you do Tai Chi and train it like a wrestler, you're going to be badass. So there's no real bad martial arts, right? No. But with you, I looked at you and I was like, Shotokan. And then obviously Geoff was like, oh yeah, Tony, back in the day, man, he was a Shotokan guy. And I'm like, he must have stuck out like a sore thumb. Because I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, I did.
Because you've always had a fluidity thought process as well, which is where I want to actually take this to.
Yeah.
When we first started talking about martial arts, you were one of the first guys to speak to me about martial arts it used to be a bit woo-woo, where guys were talking about spirituality. And me personally, I used to look at some of these guys and think they were Jim Jones in a gi. You know what I mean? Because they were talking about spirituality, but they weren't living that life. And you were funny because you turned around and you said to me, first of all, movement, just for movement's sake. And then at the time, you were fighting, teaching under the banner of Fighting Fit.
Yeah.
And the fighting fit thing made me smile because you pushed it. And I want you to expand on this if you can. So you pushed the physical aspect of training to literally the point of exhaustion I saw with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there were certain characters that trained with you that I was like, they're never going, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, they were never going to fight anyone. That it was more a spirituality and more of a, I'm trying to think, maybe more of an epiphany type end goal than just getting good at martial arts? Was that what you were aiming for?
Well, everyone's very unique. There are 7.2 billion people in this planet, and the only thing that we've got in common is that we're all flawed and we're all going to die. Everything else is different. We are so unique. So we're all going to take a dirt nap. Everyone seems to forget that, But our uniqueness then needs to be stripped down for martial arts as to same parallel to life. It's like, no, you've got to know who you are, what you're made of, and what you like when you're pushed in life and in martial arts. So when you do a martial art, martial being the combat side, building character, you need to be hardy. You need to be honest and hold your feet to the fire and say, you know what, I've got no gas tank. I get slapped, I get hurt. I've got no conditioning, no body armor. And then the art is the efficacy of how you move, and the art of living with others. So for me, the martial art was really going back to thousands of years. It's like now when I teach jiu-jitsu, BJJ, mine is combat jiu-jitsu. When I teach BJJ, they've got to know how to take a kick and a punch and take you down and set you up with a kick and a punch. And also they've got to understand what it's like to be seriously mauled by somebody bigger, put under pressure, so that you improvise, adapt, and overcome, because you'll never do things exactly like a technique. So for me, the martial journey has always been one of, who am I? And I was a guy who's always had a free mind, who believed in optimizing my own skeletal size. I'm not a big guy, as you know. I'm still the same weight now as I have been for 30 years. I've kept that. And I wanted to find out how hard I could push myself physically to then bring the optimum side of my technique, And in my early days, I competed every year at Crystal Palace. John knows that. And in the Open Stars. And as I got older, I didn't. My responsibilities with Jenny took over. But for me, the physical side, the martial and the physical side and the spiritual side, they're all integrated into one. And I'm okay if somebody doesn't want to do that. Again, you're your own person. But for me, I have this thing where if you're going to invest years in the martial arts and become a black belt and do all that, be honest with yourself, be honest with your students. I say, if you want me to teach you, if someone attacks your family, you've got a chance. But some people train and it's okay, and they wouldn't be able to use that in any efficient way. And there is nothing wrong with that. So in answering your question, for me personally, the physical aspect was to monitor my aging, my movement, how to adapt, so that you become the best version of you by pushing yourself to the limit. Doesn't mean you've got to be the best fighter, but that'll still protect you, because no one likes a guy who constantly attacks and coming forward. You can fight a guy whose technique's not as good as yours, but he just keeps coming forward. He doesn't give up. There'll be a point in you when you go, I don't want this. So for and it was a metaphor for life. It was like when I trained the guys here, I hill train them, I weight train them. And I used to take them up the hill with 25 kilogram bags. And one of the lads, Matthew, one morning said, why have I got to carry this bag? I said, because it's a metaphor for life. Carry your load. And he never forgot it. He said his life changed at work and everything, because we would do 2-3 hours out with the heavy bags, and it was like he learned to carry his load. He learned not to put it down, So in answer to your question, I judge nobody. I have no issues with what people do. But for me, if you're going to train and invest that time, it's like investing to be a mechanic, be a mechanic, So it's my metaphor for life of like, and know who you're like when your back's against the wall, when you're pressurized. And that is what saved me and helped me to look after Jenny for the last 30 years with Huntington's disease. All that training, all that neural connection, all that neural memory of going, I can't do this, I can't do this. And that learning that you've always got one more rep, one more minute, one more step, one more mile, one more punch, one more round. When the chips are down in life, it's that same neural collection that says, you got this. You got this, you've got this. It's a bit long-winded, but that's my thing.
No, it's a real, because as you were saying, it's one of these, one of the things that I've always admired about you is from day one, I've always loved you. And I mean that, because you've been very
That's
inspirational
nice.
to me. First time I ever really put on a gi, you were there. You actually got 2 stripes. And what's his name? Mark Collett got 4 stripes. John Will was there. And I've said this in so many interviews. Will's had this, right? You graciously invited me and Al Peterson down to meet John. It was the first time we ever met. And then John turned around to me and he said, I've still kept the email, by the way. He sent me an email afterwards and he said, I'm really reticent when I meet new people. He said, I'm always very guarded. He said, but I don't know, there's something about you, Mick. And he says, you and Alan, he goes, you're a great advert. And at the time, we were still, I was always more Carly, JKD, even when I was karate. When we were doing all that reality-based stuff, I always steered away from that because I was like, well, I don't really need to learn how to fight, even though I do fight, because I've got social skills. I know how to talk to people. Dare I say it, I'm quite good at making people like me. And last time I checked, it's very hard to punch another person in the head if you actually like them. So I used to always use that. I used to say, yeah, but I'm only doing it because I enjoy this. This is fun. I had a conversation with John. I remember coming back from your place and I was like this going, if that guy was doing Tai Chi, I do Tai Chi now. And that's when I threw myself into BJJ. But it was really funny because I was watching you that night and you won't know this because you didn't realize you were going to you were just hosting John. You didn't realize you were going to get 2 stripes, right? And I remember you getting 2 stripes. And I remember we've got a picture of us after the seminar. And I remember you looking down at your belt with 2 stripes on a white belt. And I remember looking at your face and you won't realize this, but this is the serial killer in me. And I overanalyze everything. But I looked at you and I was going, that guy's more made up about that. And I reckon almost is when he got his black belt at karate. Because it was like, I remember you going, I wasn't expecting this. And you said it a few times. And that, as I said, that bit there, impressed me. But for all of your prowess and, and you are physically a talent, we went, I think you'll remember, we went to Resorts World to go and watch. We were going to go and see Clubbed, the Geoff Thompson movie. And you were there, a couple of your guys, Jenny was there as well. And then I remember it felt to me like it was 2 weeks later, but it was, I don't know, it was a couple of months later. And then that was the Huntingtons disease. And I was like, what, that gorgeous, vibrant woman that I was chatting to. And then I remember you've been, like, you haven't put your work life out there on social media, but you've chronicled this journey that you've been doing with it, right? And this is the bit that I'm going to say, and it's going to sound really cliche when I say it. For everything you've done, dead impressive. But the way that you gave up work, the sacrifice that you've done, the way that you've, instead of seeing it as this burden, you've looked at it and go, no, this is just a new normal. And I've really been inspired the way that you've done it, and then still managed to do everything else. So I've often thought about this when I see people crying about, oh, I can't progress in jiu-jitsu, you've got to invest. And I'm thinking, you need to look at Tony Terranova's life, because I marvel at how you're able to get the time to be able to do this, right? So can you explain to, for the guys who are listening, first of all, Jenny's conditioning, and then this is, I don't want to steal the thunder here, but how long she's had it, and then what they usually say the prognosis is. So if you can go from there, please.
Her mom died of it, and I was last man standing for her mom. It wasn't very good, but a lot of lessons learned. As you know, pain is your best teacher. Jenny went and tested in 1995. We went down because the genetic test came because she wanted another kid, and we weren't going to have a kid if she had it. Got 2 already. And I remember it like now. I do this at my motivational talks. I remember sitting in the room, she's clutching my hand, and the geneticist came in and the nurse, and he started talking, and I said, this is the start of my journey, Mick. You need to know the start. And I said,
Yeah.
Doc, just say it, because I got this. There's no one else going to get it but me. Please, I understand your duty. And he said, I'm sorry, it's bad news. And I've never heard a woman scream that high. And she gripped my hand, and I remember it like now. There was this, like, 2 rows in front of me. One was I could crumple into a puddle and cry. And the other one was I could grab the courage that was on offer. And I had a split second to decide. And I took the courage, but it was like a Rambo knife going through my chest. I could barely breathe. But I knew then, with all my training about breathing and, visualization, small goal setting, self-talk. And I brought it all into play, and I took my emotions, I put them in a box, and I metaphorically imagined that box going into the bottom of the ocean. I learned from mentors a long time ago, a man who can put his emotions away when the shit hits the fan is a dangerous guy. And I said, I'm taking it home now. And it started from there. And that was the point. I said to myself, if I take quitting off the table, I'm on a roll. That's all I got to do. Because whether I quit or carry on, fucking pain's the same. So, and this is my queen, man. This is so devastating. It's not about me. So then I intelligently put a plan together. She's supposed to live 10 years. She's in her 29th year now. And I've asked, I've had very top medical people asking me to write a book about this, which I will one day. All the modalities I've done, which are 90% not medical, they're just exploration of so many things. I could literally have a podcast for 8 hours on the health modalities I do with Jen, which I apply to myself because I'm the guinea pig. And then I intelligently feathered myself into things like, I had a high job, Mick. I traveled all over the world in the oil power.
I know.
Gas. Well, I dealt with billionaires. I mean, I was, I'm just another stumblebum, but I'm like, no, I was up there,
Yeah, you were.
So what I did is I knew, I don't know if you're aware of the astronaut syndrome. The astronaut syndrome is when they first put the guys into space, every time they came back down, they were like suicidal. And they asked one of the astronauts, I can't remember who it was, and they said, why are you suicidal? He said, 24 hours ago, I was steaming down in a capsule, burning up, and I could do this with my thumb and not see the earth. And then the next day I'm at home and my missus wants me to go buy fucking bog rolls and Kellogg's cornflakes and shit like that. And he said, it killed me. So I knew the astronaut syndrome. So what I did is I cut my work down. I feathered it slowly as Jenny became ill and let the 2 things grade in like this to the point now where I could work from home and my partner do the traveling. I still work now because healthcare is expensive. So I work still in the engineering world, but modern technology has helped me. So in answer to your question, the biggest thing for it has been love. There's nothing more powerful than that. And also, like I was saying to Will earlier, I treat the patient, not the illness, which is what Patch Adams says in his film. I treat her, and every time I think it's hard, I go, no, she's having it hard. It's like when we did the 1,000-mile bike ride in 3 days with no sleep. I was 62. The guys were in their 20s and 30s, and I was asked, what's the hardest thing about this? And they were all expecting all this deep thing. I said, I've got an arse like a punched lasagna. The rest of it's all right,
Yeah.
But all I did on the bike ride, I put pictures of Jenny all over my bike. And every time it got hard, I looked at them. And one of my young riders was with me, and he would say to me, she's having it hard, not us on this hill. And I'd go, you're right, Mark, you're right. And I'd push on and I'd push on. And I did 3,500 training miles for that ride, most of it on my own because we all worked different hours. And 10 days before the ride, I hardly had any sleep. She was poorly. And they said, and my daughter said, should I tell the others you've had no sleep? I said, no, it's fine. So in answer to your question, how have you done it? I've done it because I wanted to do it. And I've done it because I took quitting off the table. And I've done it because we're men, Mick. We're men.
Yeah.
Men are honorable. We're men. We're men. And I know in today's world, no one likes a warrior till the enemy's at the gate, Mick. But we're men.
Well, you just
Yeah.
said something there. Like first of all, it's the classic meme and T-shirt now. Failure is not an option. I have the same thing. So no, I can't fail. Why not? Because I've been a loser and it sucks. I don't want to do that. And like the toxic masculinity thing that you just touched on there, that's the one that's made me smile, because I'd like your thoughts on this, for the simple reason that, you know, you're a badass in karate, you're a badass in jiu-jitsu, you're a badass in martial arts, right? But the compassionate side of you has outshone everything else. And that's not just because she's your wife. It's because, as you were saying, this is all working towards being able to pay it forward, right? And the thing that I'd like your thoughts on is, I've said before, everyone talks about toxic masculinity, but 3:30 in the morning and you hear that front door being broken into, you don't want some guy with a man bun and a frappuccino in his hand. You want someone like me. You want a fucking savage who's prepared to bite someone's face off. And then they go, oh yeah, but now we put you back in the box. And you go, it doesn't work like that. You know, I have to walk around. And the Don Drager line years ago, where it's like, when you're that highly trained, the world's safer with you in it because you're not a savage, right? I believe that, but I'd like your thoughts on this, because you're one of the OGs of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Yeah, I count myself as sort of one, where we came through, and nowadays everyone wants to do Jiu-Jitsu, right? But Tony, when we started doing it, it sucked. You got the shit kicked out of you by guys who sometimes didn't really particularly like you, and they were enraged because they knew that they had this great martial art, and they were like, but these guys turn up and they disappear. Because me and you both know the amount of guys, how many guys started jiu-jitsu with you and have got to the black belt? There's not many, right? That's so.
No, they're as rare as rocking or shit.
That's it. And this is what I'd like your take on. Why do you think that Brazilian jiu-jitsu is now become such a touchstone for so many people, not just men, women as well? Because I know you've always been a fan of embracing the inner savage. You were one of the first people that I ever talked to about Stoicism who got it. And I was like, I thought I was the only person who read that. But you've always been one of those caveman training guys. And do you think that people have just caught up with it now? Or do you think it's something that we need in today's society, because we've been a little bit softened up, been a bit emasculated? It's that classic line Tyson said, the problem with the world nowadays is people get away with saying shit and they don't get held accountable for it after. I hope I'm not answering the question for you, but I just like for you to expand on that if possible.
Well, first of all, I'm a storyboarder of contrasts. In everything I do, I'm a contrast, because I embody the Zen way of the middle road. The middle road isn't the middle line. It's going round and round and round and round. And I'm like that about my work, about my martial arts, about taking care of Jenny and everything that I do. So I have a very open mind, but I don't get too attached to anything. It's kind of fluid. So in answer to your masculinity, when I was in Coventry, like in my 20s, I've got friends that will attest now. They'd see me running out in the road with a backpack with a brick in each hand, because I had no money for my grip, with a rope so I could work on the trees. The stuff that's out there now, and I've been doing it for 30, 40 years. I'm just not very good on media putting it out there, you know. And yeah. I've done the training, the periodization. I mean, like now I train 7 days a week. I'll often get up in the morning. I'll do a 700 rep routine, body weight and bands in 20 minutes. It's efficacy. It's like Wayne Dwyer said, you squeeze an orange juice, you get orange juice out of it. You're not going to get apple juice. So when you get squeezed, you find out what's in you. Yeah. You know, and you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to hold your feet to the fire and say, I'm a bum at the moment. I'm a bum. I suck, you know. So in answer to your masculinity question is, first of all, remember, I'm Sicilian. I came here when I was 8, so I had a lot of scraps at school. I was never bullied, because to be bullied, you have to be a victim. The bonus I had was I didn't know what you were saying. I couldn't speak the language. So I didn't give a shit. It was just, let's bang, baby, let's do it. Okay. Yeah. Nearly got expelled loads of times. So that initial fight came from that. But in the Sicilian culture, and you are how you're brought up, the man is the man of the family. You take care of your queen and you take care of your kids. You might be, you might have a bit, you might be alpha male, but you're still compassionate and loving, and and you look up to women as well. Here's the irony: we look up to women because women are queens. They're creators of everything. They surpass men in many ways. So you've got this guy like me who is, I'd say more sigma than alpha male, but the bottom line is, I think as a man, you have to work the attributes you've been given as a man, which is like, there's a reason why guys stay on the ship when the ship sinks, women and children first. And that's not being condescending to women, because I can speak from a point of view. For someone to argue with me, I go, hang on a minute, I do my wife's personal care. I've done the shopping, the cleaning, the ironing, everything for years. So how can I be an alpha male? So you've got to be that guy who can be gentle as well. But it was like Jordan Peterson said, you actually need to be the most savage version of yourself and control it. Then you're a peaceful guy. If you are a guy who can't create damage, you're not peaceful, you're harmless. You choose to be peaceful.
Big
and that's
difference.
Okay. We're all different, so we can't all be the same, And so for me, training, like my jiu-jitsu, like I have all these tattoos on me, and they're all in a diary, and they're all for a reason. I can only give them to myself when I reach a point, and I can only have them when I've achieved it. And they all have meaning. All my tattoos have meaning. On one hand, I've got I'm all fatty, lover of fate. I decided to do that after Jenny advanced after 20 years. On the other one, I've got Veni Vidi Vinci, which means he came, he saw, he conquered.
Conquered, yeah.
Which is HD. I have the unilome on my ankle, which Jenny bought me this when I was 40, a year after a test, which is this is the Rune. And then I had a unilome, which is like the unilome is basically the struggle of life from your mum's womb back to eternity, yeah. And I had that put on my leg when I went to do the bike ride, because that would be the struggle. So my life is a contrast where I'm very gentle, very loving, very caring, very compassionate. I do a lot of mentoring, because I think also, coming back to your earlier question about why do you do what you do, I think our story might help somebody navigate themselves out of hell, Mick, because I don't think you can help someone who's drowning unless you swam in the same waters they're drowning in, Mick. And maybe my story is going to help somebody get through theirs, So that's kind of a real short answer. And there are bad times and there are good times, and there are times when you fuck up, but you get back up. You've hit
the nail on the head. It's like Chris Rock's got this great bit in his act where he turns around about the sacrifices that a father makes, and he was talking about the sacrifices that a father makes, and he said you get to this point where you've got a son, and he's talking about the whole interaction between simians, where a chimpanzee, once the chimpanzee becomes of age, a male chimpanzee, he's got to go. He's got to set up his own troop, because they will go to war with each other. And he said, and if people don't believe that, it's like, you have a 17, 18-year-old son, and you come home for dinner one day, and he's had the big piece of chicken. He said, the whole place will go up in the air and they'll start fighting each other. And he said, because guess what? You pay all the bills, you've put your dreams on hold, you make sure you're there for every school recital, you're there for every open evening. And he goes, and the only thing that you ask for is the big piece of chicken on a Sunday dinner. And he said, and guess what? That kid hasn't earned the big piece of chicken yet. And the way he says it is really, really impressive. But it goes back to what you were saying about the contrast thing, because so many people are lost now, and there's so many contrasting messages being sent out. You said two things there about the alpha and the sigma male, and every now and again I wind up a mate of mine and I call him a beta male, and he says, well, what are you? And I tell him that I'm a Ronin. And if you speak to my wife will go, yes, that's you, Mick, you're a masterless samurai, yada yada yada, because I keep telling her that's what I am, right? But the thing, these labels at the moment, they're very interesting, because I'm going to use you as an example. you were the first person that I ever spoke to about the benefits of cold water, cold showers. You were
Been doing
talking
it for
about Wim
years.
Hof. You were
I've been
talking
doing
about
that for
Wim Hof.
years.
20. I think it's 22 years ago we had that conversation.
Yeah.
That was the first one. Then you talked to me about conscious breathing, and we were talking about breathing, and I was mentioned to you about anxiety, and you said, have you tried conscious breathing? And I went, what? He goes, you just doing, and he goes, and you're not even thinking about, what was the word you used? You're not marinating in the breathing, right? So you did that, and then you sent me down. You won't realize this, but you sent me down. I've been reading Stoicism and Stoic philosophy for ages, and we talked about heroes, and I'd mentioned about Michelangelo being a hero of mine, and I'd said to you, everyone now turns around and go, oh, I'm a little bit OCD. I am. And ADHD, there's got to be something in there as well. I'm obsessive. And we were talking about Michelangelo, and I said about to be that driven to do the Sistine Chapel, and then to do some of the stuff that he did, which like putting Pius on the door as you walk in through. No, it's Gregory. He put Gregory in through the front door because he made him more important than God. And I was like, yeah, Mick Tully would do stuff like that. And then you were the guy who turned around to me. You were on about Leonardo da Vinci. I remember you turned around, you said he was reputed to be the strongest man in Italy of that age.
Yes. Yes.
I remember you telling me that, and that's got to be 20 years ago. Got to be. Yeah. So you were way ahead of the curve on that. So this is leading back to my question.
Michelangelo was a fit guy. He did all the fitness stuff. He's one of the fittest guys. He invented the ladder, the submarine, the diving suit. He invented the tank. He invented so many things. He barely slept. He would take naps every 15 minutes. There's a book called Learn to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. He's the first guy that invented mind mapping. Buzan then took it on. My mind mapping started with him. I mind mapped from the first day I got his stuff. And and in question about Stoicism. Stoicism to me is one line, Mick, and it's this. The analogy they use is, imagine you've wrestled all your life or done something all your life in a heavy sport, but never ever competed at all, whether it's karate, boxing, whatever, or any sport. You'll never know how good you were. You'll go to your grave. So taking adversity is a way of knowing how good you are and how you grow. And the more you can handle, the more you become. The more you become, the more you can do, the more you can be, the more you can give, and the more you can handle. And it goes on and on and on and on. It's like when Chico gave me my brown belt, I was broken. I'd really hurt myself. Jenny was poorly. Things were hard. And when you get these belts, they all want to beat you up, And I said, Chico, I'm not ready for this, man. And he calls me Godfather. He said, Godfather, this will tell me if you're going to be a black belt. Just put it on. Yeah. And I went home and I said to myself, how can I make sure I don't quit this? Because jiu-jitsu is a full-on arduous sport. It's you can't fake it. You can't fake it. And when someone's got full side pressure control on you, unless you understand how to breathe, how to control your mind, how to frame up, how to gently move, improve 1%, you will spaz out. You will tap. And you'll lose faith. So I went home and I looked at my tattoos and I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this now, not then. So I went and got myself a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tattoo on my chest, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Which I was going to do when I got my black belt, like I did my Shotokan on here, right? And I put it on I put it on early before my black belt, and then I said to myself, "You can't quit now, bitch, because you got the tattoo.
Got to grow into it now."
And then he gave me my black belt, and I said, when he gave me my black, it was about 12, 13 years in. I said, "I'm not ready yet, Chico." He said, "I've had this conversation with you at every belt." He said, "You are ready." I said, "Chico, man." And he said, "You are ready." He said, just grow into it. And I felt at my depth, but I put it on. And then, earlier this year, he gave me my first degree, which I was shocked about, but it took me 12, 13 years to get there, training. And in the middle of that, I'm caring for Jenny, I'm not using that as a pity party. I'm not into that, but But like when you said to me the balance about work and the family and training, like, I still train 7 days a week, 4 days a week, twice. I mix my modalities, and I'm efficient. I will bang out 4,000, 5,000 meters on the rower in 15, 20 minutes. I'll hit a 700 rep workout, because the key is, little and often, like when people say to me, I don't know what to do to train. I said, what about this? 10 squats a day for a year. That's 3,650 squats. I know gym goers don't do that in a year. It's we can all do something a bit better, Mick. And what you got to look at is that life is a balance between time and energy. Mick, you have the same 24 hours every day, but you do not have the same energy every day. I'm telling you.
No.
So how you choose to use that is up to you, and how you invest in it, because investment in yourself is a priority. Absolute priority. Absolute. In order of priority, it's your health, your relationships, and then your finances.
Yes. Yeah.
Because money's up there with air, water, and oxygen. You can't do without it. Okay.
Yeah.
But you can always make more money, but you can never make more time, Mick. Coming back to the story of like the journey and masculinity and lessons, and you've got a memory like an elephant, remembering everything I've told you. Even I couldn't remember it. It led me, led by one of my daughters and friends, to say, you need to be mentoring people. So in lockdown, it was bad. I lost my mum and dad within a few months. Mark lost his mum and dad within 12 hours. Lost my dog, everything. But during that moment, unbeknown to many, I was helping a lot of people in the background who were in very dark moments. And it was from that they said, you got to do this, mentor people. So now I've only just launched it now, is my mentoring website. And the idea of that is that experience is the coin of the realm. Experience is the only knowledge that truly endures, which is what you're talking about. Yeah. And the other thing is, Mick, like the German proverb, too old, too soon, too wise, too late.
Exactly.
So all those lessons coming back to this blueberry pie, which is my life, my own ingredients that you talk about, is I've thrown all that in, and I'm using that now, saying to anyone who wants to get involved, I can group mentor, single mentor, and all I'm doing is using stuff I've road tested. I've road tested. Do you understand what I mean? And if you can authentically say, I have been with my wife 40 years, I have been looking after her for 30 years, she is a hero, she's a real warrior, not me. I have kept training, I've done my best, I've been a bum, I've screwed up, but I have done stuff. And it isn't just measured by money, it's measured by consistency and who you are and so forth. So that's kind of like a roundup of all the questions you asked me, is where I'm at today, kind of thing. So
well, the mentoring thing, it's really, really got me because I've found myself. I had a conversation years ago with Terry Barnett over this, where I got to finally train with him when I was 32. And then we really became friends, teacher first of all, then a really dear friend, confidant. He's one of the people that I modeled my life on. And I remember having a conversation once and saying to him that I felt shortchanged. And he went, what? And I said, well, I really needed you. I needed someone like you, like a karate movie or an old kung fu movie. I needed that wizened old sage to help me. I was the callow youth that needed leadership. And he goes, but you didn't need leadership. And I went, and I remember, and it was one moment where I realized there's part of me that's still living in the past, that I'm still this scared little kid, right? Because I was like, yeah, but I needed that. And he goes, no, have you ever thought, Mick, you weren't that guy. You were the wizened old sage. That's what your role's supposed to be. And then I know this now, because when people come and train with me, first of all, it's like you were saying, like, experience is everything. I wouldn't say anything to anybody unless I'd done it myself. So I use this adage at work. I will never ask you to do anything that I'm not prepared to do myself. That's a really old school way of conducting yourself, but that's it. But then I've noticed myself that there's this real there's a vacuum, and I truly believe it's the fact that the lack of positive male role models, not in a preachy way, because I've thought this out. So you don't need a father figure. Yeah, if you're lucky enough, you have a good dad. If you don't have a good dad, do you know what happens? If you've got a good mum, by the time you're 16, you never needed that dad either. What you needed was you needed the older brother who had made the mistakes recently enough to remember how painful they were, but has maybe 5 years experience to be able to turn around and say, don't do that, mate.
You've just hit the nail on the head with something big there. If you read a book called the Spiritual Ways of the Ninja Warriors by a guy called Ross Haven, he's a shaman, and he talks about how they had circles of life, 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to all the way through to sage, and each one's got a title. You're a warrior and a sage. And this information came down the line mentorally, okay, not psychotherapy and all that. And where we are now, Mick, you just hit a very important point. This is my humble view. There is a thirst for knowledge now, like never before. Yeah. But it's like everyone's like drowning in information and starving for knowledge, because the information out there is amazing. It weren't out there in yours and my day. But you still need a mentor to salami slice it all down for you and say, let's have a look at where you are, who you are, where you want to go. And you can take a page out of that book, a page out of that book, a page out of that book. This is how you make your book. Don't, like Mother Nature is your teacher. In the morning, if you look out your window and there's a nice sparrow on your fence, he doesn't go, I can't wait to get on Instagram. I want to be a fucking eagle today. He don't give a shit. He wants to be the best sparrow. So Mother Nature is the thing, I'm not being a prat saying that, but I'm just saying, Nick, so mentoring is, you're right, mentors are not there now. And mentors are people who are not perfect, who are flawed, who've been through the grind, who are bruised, who are scarred, who've done it wrong, who will coach you from a point of love and authenticity in what you're trying to find. And you might end up with 4 or 5 mentors for different things. One's a financial mentor. I like to think myself as, a mentor who is generic, who says, look, how do you want to find your balance, your wheel of life? Because life is a set of spokes, finance, career, emotions, hobbies, relationships, money. And, trying to find that balance is the hardest thing. And there's so much noise out there, Mick, that if you're not experienced, you can be hypnotized. But if you are experienced, you won't be, Yeah,
it's funny because I've thought about this long and hard, right? So in my hand here, I have access to everything that's ever been written. So anything that's ever been thought and has been written and put down, literally everything is in there. So in the smartphone, you've got the lot, and we've got one of the dumbest generations coming through, and it's not their fault that they're dumb. I think it's the fact that the immediacy of the information has made it valueless in some ways. Because it's there on a tap. Yourself. You just came out with a great line. Do you remember years ago, if you wanted to watch like some esoteric kung fu movie, you had to go and get a mate of it who maybe had Super 8. That's before VHS. Then you had the VHS, and then you would watch it over and over and over again. Because it's on YouTube, I'll watch it once and forget it. You don't marinate in it. You don't study it, and it's just it's like I look at especially so many young guys coming through, and I've done it like in my plastering business. I've done it in martial arts. And I've only had a couple of failures. 9 times out of 10, they've always come through. And they always say, why are you helping me out? And I went, because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, but what's in it? What's in it for you? And I went, it's the right thing to do. And they went, what do you mean? And I went, well, the thing is, because I'm I like being a bit of a pontificating individual. I always like to be right as well. And I always like to be able to have the moral high ground. And to do all of that, Tony, you got to make sure that all your ducks are in a row, because otherwise, why are you? You're just a hypocrite. And it's that other thing as well, is I truly believe in those tropes that they used to have. you're a martial artist, right? Okay, do you conduct yourself in the same way? Yeah, right. Okay, so you're going easy on, like, go
You
easy on
have
the go.
as a coach, you have a responsibility to be who you say you are.
Yeah,
You as a coach, and responsibility means that you have to be able to respond, responsible. You're able to respond to the needs of people that you want to coach, you know. And that's very, very important, because in the old days we had dumb phones and smart people, because you had to think, because you had a crap phone, you know.
yeah.
So things have changed round, but technology has to advance. You have to embrace it. Spirituality means you have to be of this world, Mick. You can't fight change. You have to embrace it, be of it, and use it to your advantage. You can use smartphones and social media. It's amazing. But if you use it wrong, it will damage you. And Mick, you know this. There are times in our life when we're all fucked, and you need somebody to jump in the middle of your curse. It's like your curse, Mick.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. You go, you know what, I'll jump in your curse, man. And it's like what you said, there's nothing in it for me. You know, that's at the moment, no one realizes the most powerful radio station is WIFM. What's in it for me? And you just said it now.
Really?
Well, in my opinion, because a lot of people now, not everybody, because you can't be general, but the art of giving is a little bit not, you know, as heavy as it should be. If you've been blessed, then you should give more. I read something the other day, I forget what I read it. He said, you know, if you've been blessed, build a longer table, not a higher fence.
It's funny, because I was trying to explain this I got a couple of the young guys who train with me at jiu-jitsu, and he's been on my case a little bit. You got far too many gis, you got far too many t-shirts. All your t-shirts have jiu-jitsu and stuff written on them. So what I did was I started going through them, the ones I could give away, and I started looking at them. But what I was doing, I was giving away the ones that I didn't particularly like, the ones that I didn't wear for a while. And then I said, well, am I really giving them away, right? Or is this who's doing who the favor here? So of course, there's one guy in particular, I've got to give him a shout, Iannocaro. He's a great kid, purple belt. He's a phenom. He's one of the loveliest kids I've ever met. He's a great guy. He's 26, 27 years of age. And we were chatting, and I said, dude, I'm like 31 years older than you. No, 29 years older than you, sorry. And I know he likes a craft ale, right? And he likes craft ales, and he really, really likes old school MMA. And so I rocked up and I gave him a couple of old school t-shirts, a couple that Henzo Gracie had given me. And the thing was, they did really, but they meant a lot to me. But I knew that he really did get in them. And then he says, look, you know, every Thursday you turn up, like, I'll go training tonight, and I'll turn up and I give him a can of craft ale. I said, drink that after training tomorrow night. It will get you to sleep, right? And he goes, you don't need to give me that. And I said to him, I said, dude, maybe I'm just getting old, but you don't realize there's an absolute joy in giving people stuff. I said, because it was just sitting in my drawer. And again, I know it sounds really Buddhist, but it's that whole thing of like, you don't own the car owns you. That possession owns you. Like, let it go. And it was.
Yeah, well, you don't want to let your possessions possess you, Mick. That's the point.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing. And like, so obviously there's a couple of other little lads that train with us. And when I say they're little, they're all like 5'8", 5'10". You'll know, Tony. And I make a joke out of it, because I say, look, you feisty little blue belts, right? I have to get on your good side somehow, so you don't batter me. So what I'll do is I'll give them a t-shirt. If I've got a gi that I don't wear very often, I'll give it to one of them. And like, you'll know this, because these are as rare as rocking horse shit. Do you remember the black Gracie Barra gis back in the day? They don't make them anymore. Well, I was given one by a mate of mine, and then I managed to buy another one on eBay. So I had this one hanging up, and I couldn't let it go. And I gave it to another kid who trains with us, Remy. I gave it to him last week, and he lost his mind over it. He was going, but dude, this is worth a couple of £100. And I went, it's yours now. And he was like, what? And I said, it's yours. And he went, why? And I said, because I knew you'd dig it. And he went, but, and I went, mate. And I wind up all the young guys there because I said, listen, 15 years time, I'm 70, right? So you guys just got to stay in jiu-jitsu and get your black belts, because there's 28 gis in my house that I've got to go somewhere. And I've already told the wife when I check out, they're all coming down to Erdington for you guys. And they're like,
are you worried when you die that your wife will find out how much your gis really cost me?
But my real worry in life is if my wife sells the gis for what I said I paid for them. That's the real worry. That's the real worry. But I'd like to get you. I'd like to get you back to when you're talking about your mentoring program. How much of that is because you're known as the practical philosopher, right? And the beauty of philosophy is, so guys, if you're listening to this and you're not into philosophy, you're the sort of guys who turn around to a guy on a motorbike and say, so why do you ride a motorbike? I ride a motorbike because I ride a motorbike. Yeah. It's like philosophy. Why do you enjoy philosophy? The fact that I have to explain to you why I enjoy philosophy means you're never going to get it. But can you explain? I already know half of the story here, but when you first got into philosophy, and because I know you've used it to basically guide you in nearly everything, as far as I know, in your life. So when did you first start reading philosophy? Or were you like me, you just had a load of these mad thought processes, picked up a book by Marcus Aurelius and went, wait a minute, I've been thinking that shit since 1982. Is that you?
I think for me, coming from a Sicilian background, there's something they do that we say we have a mental health pandemic. I think we have a management of mental health pandemic. It's different, right? And I also believe that a lot of the issues we have is because no one sits around the campfire anymore, shoulder to shoulder, eating and drinking,
Yeah.
And from my culture, it wasn't in the camp. It was a mangiare a campagna. We would eat out in the campagna is like out in the forest. So I was there till I was 6 years old, starting my school there. And then coming over here, those philosophies were still carried on by my parents and uncles and aunties. So, connection is a big part. And the older people philosophize a lot. They talk about the old days. They talk about this and that and the other. And then when I met Jenny and her mom was poorly, I knew what was coming down the pipe. And I thought, man, I need to get deeper here. And when Jenny got tested, I told myself, you need to go learn now. You need to go deep immersion. So I made myself a mobile university. I traveled to Russia, China, Mexico, Japan, Toronto, Malaysia, anywhere. And I would decide what book to study on that trip, what to take out of it. I kept a journal now, which I've still got, which book I took. I can, like when I was in Lake Como working, I took Krishnamurti. Jenny was going through a bad phase. I was on Lake Como. I always took a training regime and a book so that while I was away, I became a mobile university, a mobile fitness guy. If I was in South Africa, I would train in different altitude. So I squeezed the juice out of my time and balance energy. I wouldn't sit on a plane and eat shit food, drink food. I used to put their food in the bowl and cut the middleman out,
Yeah.
So like that started with Jenny being tested, and I just went into everything. You name it, I went into it, including modalities like CBD, NLP, EMDR, somatic self-therapy, symptoms, trauma treatments, everything. And like, because I'm autistic and I'm off the scale and I'm an engineer, I can absorb information and then I strip it and apply it. So it was to give myself the best chance of me surviving, because I knew my weaknesses, and making Jenny survive, that I did it. And it became a magnificent, like, kind of an obsession type thing,
Yeah.
So, and I would use a 20-hour flight when I worked in Siberia in January, and it was like -40, and it was like freezing, but I still took my stuff, I still trained, I still read, and I did that over decades, and every little bit added up. Like when I was in Lake Como, I was training out, looking at Lake Como, and I appreciated the magnificence, but I'd had a call from Jenny that was really dark. And I opened up Krishnamurti's book, and someone asked him in an audience, why are you always okay? And he said, because I'm all right with whatever happens. Bang. That done it for me, that trip. I'm okay with whatever happens, you know. So
Yeah.
in answer to your question, I did it for the benefit of others, and then out of it came this knowledge that I was able to strip and absorb and analyze and field test. And that's what I use now. Like, you know, I'll do group mentoring or business mentoring. I'll do motivational talks. I'll do one-on-ones, but it's more financially efficient if there's 3 or 4 of you, you know. And all I do there is take my life experiences and say, can these help you? Because you know, I've had a divorce. We all fuck up. I've had a divorce. I've been married 4 decades. I've lost a business. I've built a business. So, you know, failure's our greatest teacher. So you reconceptualize it as an opportunity to become better, because failure is just an event, Mick. We created that word, and it's timeline. If I played you at tennis now for an hour and you won, if I played you for 3 hours, I might win.
Exactly. You've just said something. I use it all the time. I tell beginners, especially jiu-jitsu is the best one, because as you said, it's the one from day one. You're literally going to be put under the cosh, and you'll find out who you are. And then what I like about it is, I found out who I am. I'm weak, and I went, you are at the moment. And they're like, what? And I said, no, don't accept that you're weak. And they go, yeah, but how do I get good at jiu-jitsu? And I tell, even down to the kids, but I don't use the same language for the children. I always say, you don't get good at jiu-jitsu. You run out of ways of being shit at jiu-jitsu, because literally, that's me. Because it's like, right, okay, so I've done 11, say we'll use arbitrary number, 11,000. So I've done a shit armbar 11,000 times. I've run out of ways of being awful at it. Now I've got to be good. And then it's that way that you have to you just have to reframe your thoughts. When you were talking about NLP, you were the guy that, after speaking to you, I went and did my practitioner and my master practitioner courses in NLP, and only for one reason. One of the builders I worked for, I couldn't connect with him. I could have got it. I could have saved all the money, but I probably wouldn't have learned the lesson. And by the fact that I spent all the money meant I really learned the lesson. But it was literally down to VACOG. He'd be there and I'd be saying, listen, I'll speak to you next week. I'll see you next week. So I'm visual and auditory, and he's going, you don't know how I feel. You never stay in touch. And I'm going, look, I'll see you next week. And then couldn't connect with the guy. And then next time I saw him, put my hand around his shoulder. I said, come here, me old mate. Let's have a look at this. Feel the quality. And then he was going, my God, Mick, what happened? You know, I always knew you were my sort of guy. And I'm like, no, it's just, you've told me now that you're a little bit more steering towards the kinesthetic portion. Now, if you don't mind, we mentioned earlier Jordan Peterson, right? So he's a very contentious individual with a lot of people, right? I personally think he's a great man, and I think about 70% of what he says I really agree with. Then there's probably 20% of it that I go, and then there's 10% I go, no. But the thing is, I love all of the Beatles apart from Yellow Submarine. So guess what? That means there's always going to be something that I don't particularly like, right? But why do you think that people like Jordan Peterson, there's a few guys, Chris Williamson, who does the Modern Wisdom podcast, why do you think these long form podcasts are so relevant and so popular now than ever?
I think it's because there's a disconnect in society. So in the real world now, what you've got is everyone's looking at the 2D images on the screen and forgetting the 3D images next to them. And we have got a decline in wisdom as the years have gone by. And now what you have is, like, you've got an access to the author immediately, who's able to elaborate on what they've learned. Like Jordan Peterson's very well read, he's very well scripted, he has a lot of knowledge in many areas, okay, and he's an expert in what he does, and I like a lot of what he does. Some of the stuff I won't go with, but the pages I'll take out of him. And because there is so much disconnect in the world and confusion, and loss, people are looking for direction. There is a thirst for it, for wisdom now, Mick, right? And anyone that can elaborate that, and the more you can simplify it as well, the more you can break it down. And where you can get lost with some of these guys is sometimes they can go a little bit too deep, which is good. It can appeal, it can appeal to certain audiences, but the general audience, the example I'll give is, you'll have somebody talking about how to make your life better. It will go something like this, Mick. We'll play a game, yeah? You need to meditate, you need to have a cold shower, you need to have infrared, you need to stretch, you need to train, you need yoga. You tell that to a single mom with 3 screaming kids who's absolutely bollocks first thing in the morning, she'll go, fuck off. I've just about got enough time to get their toast on and get them off school. So what you've got to do with her is you've got to appreciate the situation she's in and say, look, all you got to do is start off with a hot shower and just finish with a cold one. And then, you know, when you've packed the kids off to school, before you get in your car, just breathe for 30 seconds, do 10 squats a day, start with that, and your self-esteem will begin to grow. Squeeze the juice out of the 1 minute changes. And there's a bigger audience that wants the great information they've got, but it's difficult to take. And sometimes because of that, they can get lost a little bit. Like, I love all these podcasters. I think they're all amazing, you know. But where I come at it is how can you simplify it for the general audience? Like Jordan Peterson's got some great messages out there, like carry your cross, carry your burden. He's absolutely right. Okay. But for some people, that has to start slowly because it will kill them, Mick. It will kill them because they're not used to it, or there's too much, you know. So in answer to your question, if you understand what they're saying, like Huberman's amazing. Huberman's one of my heroes.
Love him. Love him. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you look deep in his messages, he's basically saying to you, in all these messages, there's what I call, in engineering, we have a scatter graph. So if I've got to break this oil into different hydrocarbons, depending where my oil comes from, I have to break it at different pressure and temperature. But then I'll do these graphs that will cross over and go, the mean average is this and this. So if you take the mean average of all these people like Goggins and even, you know, Andrew Tate, people give him a bad time. He says a lot of good stuff. Sorry, you know, I'm not going to agree with everything, but he says a lot of good stuff. And he is what it says on the tin, you know, he's a beast, you know. Yeah. And then you end up with this common thread, Mick. And the common thread is this, Mick. Slow down, cool your jets. We're all going to take a dirt nap. Drink more water, watch your food, metacognition, be aware of your awareness. Imagine that you're watching yourself on a movie. You coming in, watching yourself on a movie, third-party disassociation. Yeah. Right? Move a little bit. Enjoy it. Embrace the joy of movement. Right? Reassess your life. Don't punish yourself. Be honest with yourself. Start slow. Start from where you are. Do not compare yourself with anybody else. Keep it simple. Create your own peaceful garden. You've got your own ecosystem. You have your own ecosystem, Mick, how you operate. You have a cup of coffee at a certain time, a dump at a certain time, you have a shower at a certain time. Someone starts messing with your operating system, you ain't going to make it. It's like the ecosystem in the Antarctic or the desert or in Mongolia, because I've worked everywhere, everything's different. We all have our ecosystems. And what you got to do is look at your ecosystem and say, how do I work within this? Because some of the stuff that the people are saying isn't going to work for your ecosystem. Like me, I'm not a money chaser, right? Yeah. So I like to be balanced. I like David Goggins because he doesn't. I mean, like Khabib is my hero because he leaves a legacy, not money. And like David Goggins, way look up to him massively. But I couldn't do what David does because I've got all these commitments. But he's not telling me to. That's what people don't realize. What David's saying is, look, just take an example from me. Even Tate says, look, I need 40, Lamborghinis to keep me happy. But if you're content, that's cool. So what you've got to understand is that these people are giving you valid information. Don't judge them. Don't be divided. Take what you need to suit you, to Michaelize it, if you like, because your name is Michael, and create your own peaceful garden. So you could be the happiest guy in the world who flips burgers because you've got a clean flat, you dress nice, you read good stuff, you're not interested, people want to be around you. I'm going on a bit now, Mick, but that's
no. The way you see, just as he's saying, it was two things that resonated with me immediately. First of all, you just basically turn around. I wasn't a fan of Bruce Lee's, right? Yeah, when growing up as a kid, not really. Mr. Miyagi was the reason I got into martial arts, right? Because he got Ralph Macchio laid. So the thing is, I looked at that and I go, come on, Mr. Miyagi's the dude, right? But Bruce came out with that great line where he said, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. But what people don't, what Bruce, that's the quote that everyone trots out. But the real quote is, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, do your own research. Yeah. So that was the world, because it was like, and then add what is specifically your own. And it was really funny because, as you mentioned like Huberman, right? And Huberman came out with this great line. First of all, he was talking about why he always covers up his tattoos. And he said, because it's the information, not me. And just having my tattoos on show might make one person focus more on my arms than what I'm telling them. So that's it. So first of all, some people might look at that and go, he's just being like self-effacing. I look at that and I think, no, this is a guy who realizes that the message is more important than the messenger. That's the first thing I thought was really cool, right? And then the second thing, as you were mentioning all these guys, years ago, me and you, again, we talked about it, right? And I used to love Tony Robbins, right? Anthony Robbins, and Lisa Giant with him. But my issue was always the same. And I had this conversation with Geoff Thompson about it. My problem with Robbins was Robbins would get you into this fervor, get you ready to go. Come on, let's do it. The firewalk, all of that. But then he didn't give you the tools to be able to get what you wanted. It's like where you were just saying there. It's like, these guys can be a great inspiration. Goggins, right? That guy's an animal. But like, he's prepared to run until his feet bleed. I'm not.
But the thing is, Mick, for you to understand all this, you've got to throw a dog in a fight.
Oh yeah,
your dog in a fight, right? So it goes, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So breaking things down, it's like martial arts when the guy starts to punch and the instructor says, you've got to do this, that. No, Master Sken taught me years ago. He said, close your eyes and jump up as high as you can 3-5 times. And the first time you don't fall and you land with your feet perfect, that's your fighting stance.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah.
Okay, that's Master Sken telling me that. Okay, he said there is a template where you can't cross your legs and you can't be narrow and all that, but fundamentally, where your feet land, where your ankles land, where under your hips, is based on because your subconscious mind is designed to protect you. It will not let you fall. So if you push your subconscious mind to keep you safe, it will find your kinetic balance, right? So you can't be a clone of your coach. You've got to find your way of doing it. So what led me to the mentoring was, I'm no guru, I'm just another stumble bum, but I've lived it and I've done it, and I do have an ability to strip things down, whether it's martial, whatever, food, purely because I've had to, because my situation here is so restrictive. I've had to find a way to squeeze the juice out that hour, So all these people, we've got to stop being divided and criticizing this guy. They are all bringing something to you. You choose, and if you can't choose, get a mentor to help you choose, so that you don't become obsessed or, because, like, your story becomes someone else's survival guide without a doubt. But also, more importantly, remember that what's been taught today might be bollocks in 6 years' time. Like years ago, it was don't eat fats. Now it's fats keep you fit. So the way you do it is you do the Mick test. You go, well, I've listened to this. I'm gonna eat this and see how I feel. So it's all about, really comes down to one thing: who are you, Mick? That's what it comes down to.
Well, you just said something amazing there again, which is when you use the classic word. You said restrictive, right? And again, when I teach, depending on what I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching Jeet Kune Do, I always throw a few anecdotes in about Bruce Lee, right? Bruce Lee, as I said, I always say I didn't know him. Everybody that I've spoke to who knew him said he was quite arrogant. He believed his own press. From what I heard, he was quite a bit of a bully if you trained with him. He was like very dogmatic approach. You train with me, because he was all about, liberate yourself. What was to free yourself from the classicalness, right? And liberate your thoughts, all of that. But at the same time, it was like, don't liberate on your time, mate. Come and see me. I've got all the answers. So I wasn't really like that. But he had this great thing where he said liberation through restriction. And then that was a great line. And then John Will, he gave me the advice years ago: save 10% of every penny that you pay, 10% of everything you earn. Guess what? 15 years time, you're going to have this wealth of money, and you work through it. And it's really worked for me. So I'm like, I want to wrap up on this, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So if you were to give out literally one piece of advice, yeah, and please, I want you to expand on it as well. One piece of advice in regard to just having a better and more rounded approach to life, towards training. As you said, the mental health thing is the one that got me, because people now think that a mental health crisis is a hangover on a Monday morning. That's a hangover, mate. That, when you've had a sustained 3 weeks of anxiety, then come and talk to me, But I digress on that. But the thing is, if you had to give out one piece of advice, it doesn't have to be one point, it could be several. What advice would you give to, say, somebody that just was even thinking about needing a mentoring program? What would you say to them?
I think my message in life in general, Mick, is, because I like my Latin, I'm Italian, is memento mori, which means at any minute you can die. And I think the more importantly you embrace your mortality, that you're going to take a fucking dirt nap, brother, or bring meaning to your life. Death brings meaning to life, Mick. So don't waste any time. Don't get hung up in small stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's small stuff, as the book that was written. Call your jets. Find out exactly who you are, and if you can't get a good friend or a family member to help you realize you're not bullshitting yourself, and find a way for you to get through life that suits you and makes you comfortable and not anybody else, and write your own script, because when you die, you own nothing, brother, except your own story. So at least make sure it's a fucking good one, man. That's about it.
No, just as you were saying it, it's like stuff that we talked about earlier. It all comes back to it. It's like, literally, we haven't talked about anything that hasn't been written down by Socrates, by Plato, by Marcus Aurelius.
And these great podcasters, they've also, all these things all these great podcasters have done it. So there's nothing new here. It's just a different slant. It's a different take. It's a different proposition. Credit to them.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, because it's like, one thing that I've noticed since hitting 50 was
You're a baby, 50. Wow.
I'm 55 in January. But wow. myself and Wayne Lakin were talking about this, because it hit me at 50, where I actually had to accept my mortality. And up until that point, I was a young guy. And the acceptance and embracing the fact, it was like you say, the memento mori. I love this, because so many guys in jiu-jitsu are saying it, and I look at them and I'm like this: you don't really believe it yet. You haven't had that bit where it's like when everyone says I'm cool under pressure, and you go, you haven't been tested yet, my old mate. The egg gets boiled, mate.
It's like what I say, Mick, is what you do in your 20s affects your 30s. What you do in your 30s affects your 40s. What you do in your 40s affects your 50s and 60s and so on. And that's how it works. Okay. If you're the same person at 20s that you are at 50, you've done something really wrong, brother.
Definitely,
right?
Definitely.
So as you operate through those, you change. And I think that's very important to remember that. That's why I'm going to get T-shirts made for you and me that say, the older I was, the faster I get.
Now that I can live with. That can I live with. Tony,
the older I was, the older I get, the faster I was, it will say.
That was the one. That'll be the one. Now, Tony, before we sign off, so how can people how can they connect up? I know you got the Practical Philosopher. That's on Instagram, right? So
yeah, I've got a website which is thepracticalphilosopher.co.uk. I'm on Instagram, Practical Philosopher. My daughter came up with that name. I'm not very good with names. I remember, I did a draft book in 2007, and it was called, looking through, the nuts and bolts of living, looking through the eyes of an engineer. She said, Dad, that's shit. I said, what should I call a book? She said, your book should be called The Monk with a Baseball Bat. And it's,
That's it. No, that is actually, the monk with the baseball bat. I do get, that would really work for you.
So basically, I'm the Practical Philosopher on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. There ain't many Tony Terranovas, and I've got the website which my friends helped me set up. And it's a slow burn for me. I'm patient. I take my time. I'm trying to make some meaning out of my suffering, Mick. I've had some hard times. It's cool. It's made me who I am. I'd never want any different, I would do it all over again. And it's just about passing that information on, brother. That's all.
Well, all I can say is, I'll tell you now, finally, everyone else gets to find out what I found out the first day I met you. You've inspired me, literally, Tony. I mean, from day one, and in a industry that's full of charlatans, but here's the ironic thing. It was full of charlatans, but the only guys who are still hanging around now are the guys who have got the legs, because everyone else is, oh, well, that's what I used to do. And you go, oh, really? Oh, you didn't really believe it. But from day one, you've always inspired me. You were one of the reasons why I stuck at jiu-jitsu. And then and it wasn't like I was chasing you because I wanted to get the same belt as you. But I was like, if Tony can do it, I can do it. I've used you several times when I've been talking about seminars. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart, man. You inspired me from day one. You continue to inspire me. And I'm a guy who inspires people. So, that's a pretty cool thing, right?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I mean, thanks for it. I appreciate it. The only skill I've got is I don't know how to quit. That's what I'll leave you with, mate.
That ditto. I'm a black belt at showing up. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
Thanks,
all right,
brother.
guys. Thanks. See you.
No worries.